Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beatriz Cantara. I'm the Director of Engagement in the Institute Community and Equity Office. Welcome this afternoon. If you're joining us in person and in Boston, it is another beautiful day. We'll take it. For those joining us virtually, we hope you also have good weather wherever you're at. So before we begin, I'd like to do a few acknowledgements. There are many people that have made this event possible. So I'd like to begin with my programming team, led by Paulina Wolf, Molly McInerney, Alejandro Ramos. So again, they're the ones that do all the hard work to make this event possible. So please join me in thanking them. I also want to thank our AV team, Rob and Ben. And Rob is from the AV team, and MIT Video Productions is Ben. So again, thank you again for making this possible with your help, and also archiving these presentations so that we have it for posterity. We'd like to thank senior leadership. That would be Provost Cindy Barnhart and Vice Provost for Faculty Paula Hammond. We want to acknowledge our colleagues at Lincoln Lab who are joining us in person or virtually. The speakers faculty host, Professor Wes Harris from Aero Astro, and our scholars, our current scholars joining us both in person and virtual. I see virtually Justin Wilkerson, Janine Dawkins, and Leslie Jonas. So thank you for joining us. Note, we will be recording this session. Friendly reminder, please stay muted during the presentation. Live captioning is available. So for those joining us in person, we have QR codes at the back of the room. Please consider completing that. It's always helpful to get feedback so that we can improve our program. And those joining us virtually, you will receive a link via the chat function. I believe Molly or Paulina will be dropping it in the chat. Subscribe to our newsletter, ico.mit.edu, if you'd like to hear more about our events and future presentations with our MLK scholars. And of note, we have our next and final presenter for the spring semester, and that is on Tuesday, April 22nd, here also in this space with Christine Taylor Butler, and always there's an option to join us virtually. About our presenter, Dr. Donna Nelson obtained her PhD in chemistry at UT Austin and did her postdoctorate at Purdue. She was the first female and only Native American to accept a professorship at University of Oklahoma Department of Chemistry. She has published over 200 papers and has received many honors, including the Guggenheim Award. Dr. Nelson was a science advisor for the hit television show Breaking Bad and was elected to 2016 President of the American Chemical Society. Her research and creative activities focus on the topics listed by building communities in them. I also want to point out this is Dr. Nelson's second year as an MLK visiting scholar. She was here first time in 2010, where she was hosted by Professor Michael Strano in the Chemical Engineering Department. Without further ado, I invite Dr. Nelson to join me on the stage and pass the mic to her.
So thank you very much for coming. I'm going to present some statistics today, statistics on fentanyl. And you've probably heard at least some about this in the news. Sadly, I have also. And that's what interested me in working on this. After all, fentanyl is a chemical, and I'm a chemist. And so I became very interested in this. So we can all pull out our naloxone and show it to each other to prove that we are ready to combat fentanyl. Okay, this is the antidote for fentanyl. I've heard so many stories from parents who talk about the death of their child. And it's almost always the same, sadly. They say, and there are more boys dying than girls from this. And again, we're talking about children. And the story that they relate almost always goes, my son told me he was going to go in his room and do whatever. The next time I went into his room, he was lying on his bed and he was gone. And that's all they know. They don't even realize that he was involved in drugs. And if they had some naloxone with them, there's a good chance they would be able to bring him back. Okay? Because even if the child looks dead, and there are some signs of that, the wooden chest syndrome, the constricted pupils, but the breathing may just be very much slowed. The pulse rate may be very much slowed. And so it may still be possible to bring them back using this, but you have to have it there on hand to use it immediately. And so that's why every time I give this talk, I have this with me, and I always promote naloxone. Okay, it's not very expensive. You can carry it with you. I carry it in my purse all the time. And I don't do drugs, so that's not why I carry it. So, so let me tell you a little bit about what I do and why I do it. Let's see if, yes, I'm going to be able to get this to work. So when I first was making the decision to work in this area, these are some of the types of headlines that I saw. And they were coming out like almost daily. And it was very disturbing to me. I had never seen anything like this. We all know that chemicals, some chemicals are deadly, but we've never seen anything like this. And like this, we have been losing so many of our fabulous talent to fentanyl. Here are some of the people who died due to fentanyl. Some of you may have heard of Prince, died due to fentanyl. Some of you may have heard of Tom Petty, and there are many other musicians lost due to fentanyl. I'm not going to read all of these. A lot of athletes. Some of you may be football fans from UT Austin. And look at the ages of some of these. 17, that's too young. That's just too young. And a lot of our entertainers. Bobby Brown Jr., okay, Frank Vallelonga, actor in the movie Green Book. And once again, let's see. Here's one that died at the age of 16. Some of these people are really young. They're just starting to live, and their life's over way too early. And so this is what made me decide to work on this. Fentanyl. You've heard that heroin is, you can overdose on heroin. Fentanyl, this is how much it will take to kill an average 150-pound person. This is how much fentanyl it will take to kill the average 150-pound person. So this is, it's 1% as much. This is just 2 milligrams. And what you hear on television or in the news is often wrong. Just last night I was watching a show and they were saying it was 2 micrograms. Well, it's not that potent, okay? It's 2 milligrams, 2 milligrams. And by the way, also, it's like fingernails on the blackboard to me when I hear people say fentanyl. We are not interested in the alcohol. We are not interested in fentanyl. It is fentanyl. The fentanyl has no hydroxyl functionality. It's not an alcohol. It has no oxygen in the molecule. So, but that's probably just because I'm a chemist. When you hear the people say fentanyl, you know what they're talking about. They're actually talking about fentanyl. So One time I gave this talk to some people to a group that contained some older men. And they looked at it and they said, you need to compare the number of deaths due to fentanyl versus the number of deaths in our wars. Because when I say these were older men, they had fought in World War II and they knew these numbers just off the top of their heads. And so they were able to quote these numbers to me. And I thought, I listened to the Q&A and I thought that is a good point. That's really interesting. So I looked this up and look at this. In 2023, the number of deaths was total due to fentanyl, 441,000. And that is far more than we lost in the Revolutionary War or World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnamese War, or the Union in the Revolutionary War. So they had a good point. Any way that you slice it, the number of deaths due to fentanyl is overwhelming. And so finally, some people, some politicians started to take note. In 2024, the North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis was doing an interview, television interview, and he held up a container it was 1 pound of sugar. And he said, if this was fentanyl, it would decimate the entire population of Wilmington. That's Wilmington, North Carolina. And he's absolutely correct because their population, I looked this up, only 115,000 people. So that's a pound. 1 pound of fentanyl will kill 250,000 people. 1 pound of fentanyl, that much fentanyl, will kill 250,000 people. It is really potent. It is really dangerous. So, and that's just the reference. I try to give the references because when I give this talk in front of chemists, a lot of times they're skeptical. They want to see the reference. And so I just put the references in there. But he was absolutely correct. He's absolutely correct. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. A pound of fentanyl will kill about 250,000 people. So this is the death rate. You can see the death rate increasing. We were going along, not too bad. And then suddenly, in about 2014, it picked up. 2015, it picked up. And then it started moving up until we got to about 75,000 people per year dying due to fentanyl. That's way too many. We hear about the measles epidemic. You've been reading about the measles epidemic. 660 children got measles in 2025. They didn't die of measles, they got measles. You know how much attention is being given to that in the news. We have still about 100 people dying each day due to fentanyl. And we've become sort of callous to it. People look at this and they say, well, the death rates are going down. They are going down. It's still about 100 people a day dying due to fentanyl. The data are difficult to deal with. The CDC data are difficult to deal with. I very much appreciate the CDC, but they do have what's called, the reliable data, then there's the provisional data, then there's the partial data. You have to be able to sort through all of that. And a lot of times what's quoted in the news, they get it all mixed up. And so you don't really know what it is. But 75,000 deaths per year is like a Boeing 737 crashing each day for a year, losing all people on board. I mean, sometimes it's good to put it in terms that you can relate to. You hear, perhaps, that the deaths are declining now, and they are. It looks like it's genuine. It looks like they are. It takes so long for the data to be moved from the final data to the provisional data to the from the provisional and partial data. So, but what we can do in order to compare is we can look at the first few months of each year and compare those. And you can see here, this is where it's going up. And for 2024, these data are probably pretty reliable. After looking at these, I can tell you that when I go in and look at these month after month, they will be increasing. Each of these numbers will increase a little. And then as the year goes on, pretty soon the increase will be just 6 deaths per month. So it does taper off. And so these 3 are pretty reliable now. And so you can see it does look like the death rate is declining. It does look like the death rate is declining finally. It's believed that that is because the first responders have naloxone with them. And so they're able to administer this. This is the antidote to fentanyl, heroin, and all the other opioids. And so you can take comfort in those stories are correct. The death rate is declining. I thought it might be of interest to you to see where you are, where Boston is. So you know that you're in Massachusetts, Middlesex County. And these are arranged from, and these just happen to be the places where I've given talks. So I would show these. And you can see this is sort of arranged from lowest to highest. So you're sort of in the middle. What I originally guessed is that those states that are along the border would be, would have the highest death rates. So San Diego County had 40.51. That's one of the very highest in our whole country. Arizona, of course, you know that's going to be high. Illinois, well, I did not expect this to be so high. Boston, I did not expect it to be so high. Texas has a lower death rate than Massachusetts. That to me was unexpected. I did not expect that. And then we have Oklahoma and then Indiana, the Tippecanoe County. So that's where you are, in case you're interested. The fentanyl death rates by 10-year age groups. I like to use a data-driven approach whenever possible. And it seems that often that's not used in situations like this. So you can see that the death rate doesn't really start to increase until around the age 24, 25. And when I looked at this, I thought, this right now, before the age of 24, we've got this, these are students a lot of times. We've got them captives. We could tell, it would be a great time to tell them, stay away from street drugs. When I was teaching organic chemistry, in organic chemistry, all of the material is really packed in. It's a hard class. You don't have very many spare moments. But I would carve out 2 minutes per semester to tell my students about this and stay away from street drugs. And if you can capture them here, then maybe they won't die in these later age groups. And so afterwards, the students would email me and thank me for telling them about this. And I would show them my naloxone and tell them to get it. In Oklahoma, it's given away freely. There is a place, a website where a person can go in and type in their name and address, and the state of Oklahoma will mail them naloxone for free. So I told my students, all my students, do that, get naloxone, keep it with you. And they thanked me. They said that so many of them had had a friend or a relative die due to fentanyl. And they also said, you're the only person on campus who is telling us about this. Thank you. And so now when I go out and give talks on this, the students are very interested. So many of the students are pre-med, pre-vet, pre-dent, pre-pharmacy. They want to hear this. And I asked the students, are you getting this message on campus anyplace? They said, no, they're not being told. And I think that's a mistake. I think that the university should step up and tell the students in this age group, tell them about it, warn them about it, and tell them stay away from street drugs, and tell them carry your naloxone with you. The same message all the time, broken record. Communicate the dangers to the college students, reach them before they're at the high death rate ages. I think that it's good for the demographic groups to understand what's happening in their communities. And so I broke it down like this. Here we have Blacks, Native Americans, whites, Asians. And so the ones with the solid bars are male. The ones with the hashed bars are females. So these bar graphs show you which races are impacted the most. I don't think there's anything physical going on here that the fentanyl impacts Blacks physically more than, say, Native Americans or whites. I think it's a social cause here. And so you can see, once again, males are impacted more than women. We see that almost every time that it's differentiated. Men are impacted. There's a higher death rate for men than for women. And I think it's good for the communities to know what's going on in their own communities. Recent news. This, I was so glad to hear about this. It just came out 2 days ago. The Justice Department on Tuesday, day before yesterday, unsealed charges against the 2 leaders of this very important cartel and offered an $8 million bounty on their heads. So it's $5 million for the older brother, $3 million for the younger brother. And so when I read that, I thought, that is enough money. This is probably going to produce some results. It's 2 brothers. You can read about this. I mean, it came out in the news. So in 24 hours, the DEA and our partners seized over 100 pounds of fentanyl. So you know what 100 pounds of fentanyl will do, right? Each pound will kill 250,000 people. 100 pounds, that's 25 million people. We've only got about 340 million people in the US. Okay, so that's a huge section, it's enough to kill a huge part of our population. That's what worries me. So even if that does impact the amount of drugs that's coming across our border now, we still have another worry, which I'll tell you about, and that is the Border Patrol has been seizing drugs, as you know, and they've been doing this forever. It's estimated by people who are experts in things, which I am not, that they capture about 10% of what is taken to our border. And so let me show you this. Do you see that number over here? 27,000 pounds of fentanyl was captured. It's estimated that's about 10%. The other 90% got through. And so those of us who discuss this and work on this wonder, why are they trying to push so much into our country? Why push so much fentanyl into our country? That 27,000 pounds, since 2 milligrams is a lethal dose, that is sufficient to kill the entire US population 18 times. And it's estimated that's only 10% of what was brought to our border that they tried to get across. The other 90% got through. People who are really experts on this think that it's being stockpiled in the US. So even if the drugs being brought over the border is stopped, they're going to have a stockpile to last them for a while. And even worse, fentanyl can be used as a weapon of mass destruction. For some of you may have heard about the fentanyl being used in the Moscow theater against the Chechen rebels when they took possession of the Moscow theater. And so the Russians had to decide, well, how are we going to get the Chechen rebels out? And so what they did is they administered a fentanyl derivative through the air supply. And they said, we'll just knock out everybody in there. We'll incapacitate everybody in the room, because there were something like 800 people there to attend the performance, and then something like 60 rebels who had taken over the theater. And it worked great. It did knock out everybody. And you can read about this. You know, there's a Wikipedia article about it. You can read about it if you're interested. And the problem was that they didn't get back to a lot of the people in time. And so a lot of the attendees died. And the plan was to go in and be able to just capture the rebels and then revive the attendees. But it didn't quite work out that way. So that's a demonstration of how fentanyl could be used as a weapon of mass destruction. And so we're not really quite through with it yet. And so now, since our government is putting a bounty out on the cartel leaders, I just look at that and I hope, well, the DEA, I know some people in the DEA, they say, well, the purpose of bringing the fentanyl into our country is to disrupt our society. You may have heard J.D. Vance say that it's asymmetric warfare. So if it's asymmetric warfare, you know, there's always a possibility that it could be taken to this weapon of mass destruction. I mean, it could be put onto, you know that drones are used to spray herbicides. And so the fentanyl could be, in liquid form, could be used to spray over a football stadium. So we're not quite out of this yet. I mean, it could get worse. We're just, those of us who work in this area, we're just sort of hold our breath, hoping that this doesn't happen. So that's enough for fentanyl. The next one is, now that the fentanyl deaths are declining, and I think they will, we've got a combination of positive factors here. I think they will. I'm looking very much forward to that. We've also got xylazine. You may have heard of that. The xylazine is the tranquilizer for large animals like horses, cattle, and somehow people have gotten it into their heads to use xylazine to get high on. It's a totally different situation. If a person overdoses on fentanyl, you just sort of go to sleep. If a person overdoses on xylazine, you develop huge ulcers on the trunk of your body and on your legs. And when I say huge, I mean that big. You know, you can see them online. I didn't want to bring them because it's lunchtime. You don't really want to look at them. It looks really, really bad. So it looks like this keeps going up for the 2024 data. Again, the CDC data are not complete yet, and they're still provisional, so this is probably going to go on up. We hope that the xylazine will decline also, but who knows? There's the xylazine, and there's no naloxone, no antidote for the xylazine. At least the fentanyl, we have an antidote. And here the numbers are going up. Once again, more males than females are dying from xylazine. And you can see the age groups are very similar. They follow that same pattern that you saw earlier in fentanyl. We really need to start getting the message out to students while we have them, in college or university. I understand that in the high schools, the message is being told to students. It's a simple message: stay away from street drugs. It's a very simple message. So thank you very much.